In this interview with Dr. Elaine Ingham from the Soil Food Web, we take a deep dive into why good compost matters, the impact that good compost has on your soil and on your crops, and disease and pest management. The most exciting moment in her career when she was first studying the Soil Food Web. And Elaine gets a little personal with us, sharing some of her personal experiences as a young PhD student going into the field of science and fungi and all things biology. Dr. Elaine will be presenting the live keynote at Organic BC's conference in Penticton this year, which is happening between November 7th and 9th. So if you can get there, make it happen. Seeing Elaine live is a treat, and she loves hearing people's stories. So if you have a story or a question for her about the Soil Food Web, bring it with you. I'm Natalie Forstbauer, founder and editor-in-chief of Heart and Soil magazine. Be sure to sign up for our free newsletter at heartandsoilmagazine.com if you like to learn all about regenerative farming, gardening, and living. And if you want to help support our independent journalism and free interviews like the one with Dr. Elaine, you can subscribe to our magazine at heartandsoilmagazine.com. Hit that bell so you know when our new interviews drop, and share it with a friend if you think they might like it. Enjoy this conversation, and you make yourself an amazing day. Well, I just feel like I just want to hold a space for you and your health, Elaine, and because I know you give so much to your students and the people that you work with and the conferences that you attend and this beautiful planet Earth. And I'm just holding the space for all that love and all that attention to really just come back and be lit up inside of you.
Well, yep, I think I am, especially when it's somebody who wants to talk about those things that are most near and dear to me after my family. Um, it's what I've devoted my life to is
Yeah.
seeing this change occur. And when you think about the fact that when I was in college, for example, well, probably even earlier than that, the number of times as a child I was told that no, you can't go do that. You're a girl. I want to climb that tree. And I don't care if I'm in my dress and somebody's going to look up it like they haven't seen a billion butts before. So not quite that crude at that age, but that kind of, no, I want to go up in the jungle gym. I'll go. So what do the little boys laugh and poke and, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, you're just because you're afraid to climb up here. And then they forget all about and they've got different set of enzymes or whatever happens. But like when I started my PhD work, and stop me if you've already heard this story. Um, when I started my PhD work with Dr. Donald Klein at Colorado State University, it was experiments about what fungi did in soil. Were they important? What were they there for? They've been there for the last 3.5 billion years. You don't think Mother Nature would get rid of something that was useless in that amount of time, or the fact that she's still inventing new species that they're really important organisms. Okay, but then when you start branching out a little bit, well, the bacteria and the fungi are mostly in conflict. It's kind of like two little kids. It's mine. No, you can't. I found it first. It's mine. Fighting over food resources. And protozoa and nematodes, why are they in there? But when I first started out, my major professor asked me if I wouldn't go around to all the other people, all the professors in the area of agronomy or growing plants and all of those things. And I think it turned out to be 12 to 14 people that I had to go interview to ask if they thought it was good that I would be doing this work. What areas would I get work in, and what would the future look like? And And so I got at, I was so shy at that time of my life to talk to a professor. Oh no, someone who's smarter than I am. And went around to each one of them and walk in the door, sit down, introduce myself. Oh yeah, you're that one. You sent me a copy of your thesis proposal, and you know, um, you shouldn't do this. This is absolutely worthless. You're not, there's not going to be any jobs for you waiting at the end of your um, experience here at the university. And I kind of went, what, that's the only reason that I would be coming to university is to get a better job? Is that why I'm coming to the university? I mean, because I want to know about these critters, what they do and why they do it and how and all those good things. And so I was just kind of taken aback by every single one. The way they expressed it. If I had a tape recording back at the time and had recorded it, it was the same verbiage. So it's like they were trained by the same person to say things this way that no, don't do this. This is going to harm you. You're not going to ever find a job in this area of science because microorganisms are just they're not important. We have all these pesticides and inorganic fertilizers to do in a shorter period of time better than other Mother Nature can do it. And there's that wisp of Mother Nature, and it's like, I think you're going to pay really badly someday for your arrogance, bub. But it's not going to be this day. I just kind of, well, thank you for your, what you had to say, and I don't think I'll switch and do something else. I want to do this research for the joy of doing this research and finding the answers. And and the way I got treated as a woman in science, we were definitely second rung, or maybe really it's, after every other male race, then you stick a woman in there or something. So I was just I have a bit of sore throat, so I'm, I may end up coughing wildly here in a few minutes. Hopefully I can just pop a lozenge in my mouth.
Yeah.
So I got through, obviously. I made it through the the work for my PhD. And then I wasn't looking for a job yet. My husband and I were sort of, okay, what are we going to do? We're both going to graduate on the same day. And I actually am the senior PhD in my household because when we were walking in side by side. And I went onto this side of the gymnasium, and my husband went over there. And this side got graduated first. Good 20 minutes before he got up there and got to do it himself. So I've teased him his entire rest of the life about I'm the senior PhD here. I know best. We are going to go do this.
That's a great story. So what biology would that be in the soil food web who would do that?
Um, this the person ends. I'm kind of confused because
So if you were the person who is like in the opportunistic space to graduate first and to awarded the PhD, I'm curious what part of the soil food web, what it would be that.
oh goodness, it would be the strongest, the most able to do various jobs. They would be able to do lots of different jobs, not just one or two. I make this one enzyme and that's all I do. Well, it's important for some things if they need that kind of help in producing that particular, but see, it would be even better to have two or three or five or 10 or, oh heck, let's go for broke. Let's go for 10,000 different enzymes to make that species of microorganism to be just the most wanted thing in the universe, to have all of your um, things that your body needs to have happen, have it right here where your heart is, pumping away, right, pushing out all of the enzymes and carbohydrates and leptin, like all of the different things.
Mhm. I love how you answered that. I loved how it's not one, it's the strongest. It's the strongest of the soil food web. Super powerful. Elaine, so how many years ago was that
Was looking at my,
when
you know,
you first started
walking.
studying and looking at the fungi and pursuing your PhD?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I really started looking through a microscope when I was 6 years old. And that led to everything else, basically. My choice of friends in high school, obviously, I therefore didn't have a whole bunch of friends because there weren't other people who's that was where their brain was going, kind of in, I want to understand why the pieces go together like that. Um, so my dad took me into, well, I have got to step back.
Mm.
Um, I have two sisters. So it was the three girls, poor dad, my mom and dad. And my two sisters were very girly girls. And there's nothing more boring to me than to go shopping for clothes, especially shopping for the latest in fashion. It was in my mom's element that she could, and Jan and Carol had just the grandest time. The only way they kept me quiet through the whole experience was they promised me an apple pie, a slice of apple pie, where when we went to tea at the end of our shopping. Yeah, and I'd get one dress, one pair of shoes, and maybe a jacket or something like that. And both of my sisters would get two or three of each of the above. But it's fine with me because it got me home where
Mm.
I could go out and play with the dogs, or I could go up into the tree nursery, or I could go rafting down one of the rafts, just over in the direction of the St. Paul campus of the University of Minnesota. So it was one of those afternoons where I was just putting my foot down. No, I am not going to go out and go shopping. I'm having a hizzy fit. And my dad finally said, "That's okay. I'll take her." And mom says, "Oh, thank you, Larry." Um, because mom could go another day with me and pick out the ugliest thing in the place, and I would never notice. So he, went into the university and said, "See this microscope? I'm going to teach you how to use it. So here, 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 here. Great, got it." And he said, "Now, what I want you to do is count the number of E. coli in these samples over here." And he showed me what to do to make the slides. And I had the grandest time. It was the best treat ever to sit and look at these things cavort through the liquid. So I had a great time, didn't bug my dad at all, but it certainly set me on that future course of wanting to know why. And, like Girl Scouts were the biggest disappointment because what did you learn in Girl Scouts? How to not beat up on each other? There was always, there's always like the class bully, and they're five times the size of the rest of us girls. And from the instant they want, well, typical, yeah, prison sentence. And then and I would win the swimming contest, and I would win tracking, and I would win, and that got boring after a while. So I mostly found a nice quiet place and read books.
Mm.
So strange person. So getting to the university, going around to the different professors, to me that was stressful because you can say the wrong thing to people and they won't forgive you. There's nothing that you can do to change their mind that you're not, fill in the blank, some poor little.
Mhm.
So I must have missed making any real, enemies that day because I just kind of went, oh, okay, well, I'll take into consideration. But don't you think the fungi do something out there? They've got to be doing something that is earning them a place. And well, that place is going to be soon over because we're taking over and we're managing everything with these chemicals.
What was the first thing you discovered under the microscope when you're looking at what you now call the soil food web, where you felt that like a light bulb go off, or you felt your heart expand, or you're like, oh, that's amazing?
It's probably when one bacterium reproduces and becomes two. And it's just like, how did you do that? Okay, it's kind of like when mom had my younger sister and you know, one became two. Voila. That's amazing. And how do they stay healthy and and there are bacteria that live in these kinds of places and those kinds of places and yeah, it was all of biology is just amazing. It's and that it's such an intricate and it happens on so many layers and so many um, ways to reproduce. And then it all gets more complex. You go from the single celled organisms into now you've got fungi going in a row of each individual, and then they build up into mushrooms, and then that, and all of the next steps going all the way through. Um, where's Mother Nature aiming for? It's and you go back in time and you think about this, you know, uh, comet when it came down to Earth and smackarooed right into her. It wasn't more than like a quarter of a mile in length and um, 650,000 pounds or something like that. And for that to end up with rearranging where all of the um, beaches and the edges of the property, went into the ocean, and what used to be big, tall um, mountains are now just little dumplings out there on the in the ocean, and completely rearranged everything. And well, that's why human beings could eventually become the most dangerous creature on this planet. Even though we don't run fast, we don't do really all that remarkable at running races with lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Um, and here we are destroying this paradise.
Yeah, it's curious, isn't it?
Hmm.
Knowing what you know today, having your hands in the soil and your eyes on the soil food web, how would you describe the soil food web today, knowing what you know now, or understanding what you know and understand now?
Um, I would wish to have had more time and better equipment and more graduate students, and it all means money. Um, if we could have just convinced more people to give us the money to work on this, we'd be further along. Um,
Mhm.
I started doing work in this area back in, uh, I got my PhD in 1981 or thereabouts. And if I could have had everything I needed, uh, we probably would have long since left all of our really inefficient ways to produce electricity. We would have left it behind. what a waste of a perfectly good atmosphere so
Hmm.
that a few people can enjoy the electricity that comes on and comes off. Um, when you need to be heated, what, you know, the tiles on the roof work really well. You might have to go brush them off every time after a big snowstorm, but we wouldn't be reliant on fossil fuel digging out. And I do sometimes put across, because it's an interesting way for people to maybe look at this, is to say that when Mother Nature was looking around and she was saying, "Gol darn, all of that carbon that came from," and when the big 100, 200-foot waves came over the continents and just virtually all of the forests, all the grasslands, all of the everything got washed up smack against some mountain range. Um, and all of that got buried, all of that organic material buried in one place and over the millions of years was turned into a large deposit of oil of various flavors. Um, and Mother Nature, therefore, is probably going, how do I get the carbon out from down there and get it back up here where it belongs? Because then we could have big, giant rhinoceroses and all the things that ruled the earth back in the age of the dinosaurs. There we go. I was looking for that word, dinosaur. Um, and so Mother Nature would go, great, we could have dinosaurs again. So, she goes through the list of all of the species of animals and plants and everything else. And she finally comes almost to the back of the book and goes, oh, these guys would do a really good job if we just convinced them that they could make a lot of money. And so that's exactly what happened. Um, and then, Mother Nature wanted them to quit at a certain point, and they wouldn't quit. So we've really, well, it was Mother Nature's plan for getting all the carbon dioxide back into the air so that larger animals and larger trees could now, okay, so maybe what we're really in is a transition that Mother Nature meant to do. I would rather think that's not the case. And hopefully, if we could show Mother Nature what we could actually do to not require going backwards in time, but that we human beings can set the stage so all of us have all of the food we want every second of every day that we need it, that we would have the clothes, we would have energy, we would be able to wear to, most of us would be middle class. And when somebody comes along and wants to be all snooty about the way they dress, yeah. Um, we can just say, go live with those guys over there because that's your type. Have fun. I want to go stick my feet in the lake in the middle of the day when it's nice and hot outside and just have a grand old time.
Right.
Sit around the fire at camp time and have a, yep, that's the best, isn't it?
So true. I'm with you on that. Um, Dr. Elaine, sometimes, I don't know if you find this to be true or not, but sometimes when people hear the term the soil food web or biologicals, it can be feel really, really overwhelming. And so how would you describe it to somebody for the very first time who's hearing about the soil food web so that they could actually get a good grasp of what it is and what it does?
And what I've discovered is you have to be kind of careful about how much science you give to them. They want it in story form. The average general public takes to it really well when it's a story that you're talking about. Well, the plant, the seed falls in and it germinates and starts to grow, and it needs these helper organisms. And same thing above ground, and go through the bacteria grow first on the root systems, the fungi grow second, they come along because the things that are needed by these plants gets more and more complex the further along in this succession. And so talking through what are all of the processes that the bacteria do. If it was just bacteria alone, we wouldn't be able to have any trees would be impossible. You couldn't grow most of our grasses. You couldn't have herds of animals of any kind. It'd be kind of lonely, it'd be us and the monkeys. And so we've got to, what do you do to take that next step? Well, now we're starting to put in fungi, and here are the things they do and the things they control. And isn't this amazing how this going over here grows a more of this kind of bacteria? So this kind of bacteria puts out more of this kind of sugar, and this causes the bacteria to grow faster doing the next set of processes. And at that point, just about the time their eyes roll back and, oh my God, there's so much to know about down here. Now we'll bring in some of the dinosaur versions of today's organisms in the soil. We're going to talk about protozoa and what they do and how they like to eat, and fungi, the nematodes, the fungal feeding nematodes, bacterial feeders, all the different ways and the stories. And I so want to write cartoons about this. And I've got a few storylines that are half drawn. I need to sit down with somebody who, well, it's really kind of the money
Mhm.
to pay my salary while we're putting this together,
Yep.
and get the first of the I always think of like Batman and Robin, but these soil guy and um, compost dweller or something would be their names, but kind of cute, that the kids would really like them. They'd want to have those costumes for
Mm.
Halloween. So working with people who understand TikTok.
Mm.
Uh, not my cup of tea. Don't make me. So I'd really like to put out those cartoons
I
and
love that. Yeah.
explain all the way through why
That's been
it's
on,
so important that we manage them the way they should.
yes, I agree. That's been on my heart too. What's been your most exciting discovery about the soil food web?
Um, Gosh, that we have to have these organisms in the soil to do their jobs. And if we manage to do the logical outcome of the current management, there will be no soil organisms. And that would be it. There would be no food left for us to consume in any way, shape, or form. If we destroy through the idiotic use of year after year after year, putting on the green revolution. Isn't that cute how they labeled it? Green yep. So if we don't turn it around before we go over the cliff, it's too late. We can just moan and groan and hit bottom,
Mm.
and that's it. There
What,
is no future.
yeah, what was that moment like when you recognized and noticed that biology was the key to living soil?
Not surprised really.
Mhm.
It is an aha moment, um, and it's joyful. Oh, okay, that's how it's all really supposed to work. Well, I don't have all the organisms in here yet. We've got some of the higher level trophic levels have got to come in and get the full diversity of the bacteria and fungi, etc. But just by explaining the first half, we can get most people's attention. And then as they get to the point of really wanting to know the nitty and the gritty, we'll we'll be right there with them doing the experimentation, doing the work to demonstrate how these things fit into the system.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's a mind-altering thing to do, to figure out um, you were really the only one who understood what needed to happen. And how are you going to communicate that to the rest of the world? Especially when you know that there are all kinds of large pharmacological companies, that agricultural companies, they've cornered the market. They've got the farmers in as slaves, basically. They're peons, whatever you want to call them. Um, they only listen to those which are trying to destroy life on this earth. They don't care about their children or their children's children, as long as, yeah, so that's depressing. So
It
I'm
is.
always amazed when somebody comes along and is clearly ready to join in.
Mm.
And that's one thing that having the school has done for us,
Mhm.
is to give people a center of focus to go and learn all of these things, apply it to your backyard, or apply it to your backyard and a small farming acreage, or 100 acres or 200 or 2,000. Or we now have people that we work with in um, Southeast Asia that have land um, in the area of 250,000.
Wow, that's exciting. That's
Yeah, that
so are they using compost and compost teas on those 250,000 acres?
yep, it's taken a while.
Yeah.
They had to decide that they were going to do this, and then it was okay. Now, what are the steps? Because we obviously don't have the compost ready. If we're going to make that much compost, if we have to make this much compost, we have to have this much high nitrogen. We've got to have this amount of um, greens. We've got to have this amount of woody
Hmm.
in order to make that. Luckily, it's only in the first year that you need those high levels of the compost. 1 acre or 1 ton per acre, um, or 50, 1 ton per acre, or half a ton per acre, if we're adding in some additional foods out in the soil already. There's a couple of little things that we could do that we could really get away with. Um, half a ton of compost, and get an acre fully converted. And then the next year, you'd only have to put in half of what you put in the first year. And the next year, you're probably going to only have to use half of that, at which point, there's no point in applying more because you've already got it all.
Wow. So what I'm hearing is after 3 years or so, you would have to just do a maintenance amount of compost or not even be putting compost on
Not
anymore.
even be putting compost on it anymore. You might have a place where you make a small amount of compost and you would put a compost extract or a compost tea in a place where you can see that a disease is starting to come back in, where there's some problems, but it's insignificant given the amount that you had to put in the beginning. And so if we get everybody working on this pathway, you're pretty soon you don't are the biggest choice, the thing we've got to get right, the thing we've got to work on is making sure you're planting the plant you want to have there. But I wanted squash this year. I wanted, whatever, something else to eat. I wanted kale. Okay, these are the big and important choices in our lives. How much of which do you need? So a lot more laid back and comfortable way of living, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting. So can you make good compost without animal byproducts?
sure. Sure. Yeah. We've got to find the starting materials
Hmm.
that have the right amounts of carbon and nitrogen in them, because we need that high nitrogen to get the bacteria and fungi growing really fast, generating heat. We've got to get the temperature up above 131 for at least 3 full days. You turn it, get the temperature back up, turn it, and that then you're basically ready to roll. All you have to have is 3 turns, each of which you've got to reach 131 degrees Fahrenheit for a full 3 days. So there we are, 9 days to do all of the proper arrangement of the conditions in that compost. And
Hmm.
then you've got 10 days to let it all cool down. And now you've got your product.
Hmm.
So it's not that difficult. Now, if you want to put animal doo-doos in there, or you've got some bones, or you've got, yeah, sure, go ahead, put them in the compost pile. It's not going to hurt things. The bones you will probably want to be using an anaerobic process for the first I forget how many days it would be, but it's on the order of 15 to 20 days in order to get exit the bones of the animals, get all that carbon reincorporated, and it would probably be easier to do it letting a worm, doing a worm bin approach.
Hmm. And I think there's a bit of an illusion that compost takes a lot of time and money and biologicals are easier. And so I'm wondering what you'd say to that.
Not a chance, because it's, in time, it takes 21 days. You got to know what you're doing, have to pay attention to what has to be done properly, but 21 days. There isn't anything else more easy than doing biologically complete compost. Um, we you come in a little bit later than that when you're dealing with a worm compost, so it's going to take an extra month or so if you're working with the worms doing all the work, or if you do like the insect frass, the black flies, that takes about a month and a half. So it's not as long as, so kind of rankings in here. Um, and that's only because you really want to deal with something that is highly concentrated like bone, and it
Mhm.
takes a while for all those enzymes to work on the bones and get them all that calcium, all that carbon, all that those nutrients back into soluble form.
Hmm. And a lot of questions that come up for farmers and gardeners is they want to know how to control pests and how to control disease. And people are used to working from the top down, right? They're used to trying to figure it out from what they can do to their plants to make those conditions go away. Um, and I'm wondering how the soil food web and good compost could help with plants and with pests and disease.
Yep. Well, what we try to present with to people is that, why would Mother Nature be responsible for sending you a disease? Yeah, she's making it more difficult for you. Why would she be doing that? Because you're doing it wrong. And she's trying to send a message that is basically, wake up, fellas. And if you don't pay any attention to me, it may take me 5 years to come back, but I will be back if you don't listen to what I'm saying to you. And now the diseases are worse. They wipe out your whole crop instead of just drop reducing. Um, and if you don't listen, then okay, she's going to come back with something even more terrible, where, yeah, good luck growing in anything in there. To the point where what we're facing is we're burning up the planet around ourselves. So whenever we would like to get around to paying attention, We've got a pretty good handle on how to manage that. We don't know everything yet. I would be bored if I knew everything. But yeah, she's sending us messages, and we need to pay attention and start moving things back. And the things we're moving back are her microorganisms, her fungi, her the you know, protozoans, the nematodes, the microarthropods, the macroarthropods, the spiders, the all those things that people go, ew. You, yes, the spider does not belong crawling up on my shoulder. But it doesn't deserve to be squished. It's
Mm-hmm.
doing its job outside. All you have to do is tell it outside and then convince it. Good luck.
Right. And what about one of the a lot of people in the prairies, for example, are seeing a lot of grasshoppers, like massive, like coming in through and taking out acres and acres, hundreds and thousands of acres of crop. And so, are you saying that healthy soil food biology or healthy soil food web can help with that too?
Yeah, it can put that to rest.
And how
Um,
does it do that?
it's because the predator prey interactions get whacked somehow. Normally in the springtime, snow melts, and if you have a lot of eggs of the insect or the problem organism, its numbers will start to increase. Well, if you've applied a pesticide or an inorganic fertilizer that is going to wipe out all of those microorganisms that eat these guys, then this guy is out of control. There's not enough food in the place that it's in, so it's going to gather together in a cloud and move over to the next place. There's still no beneficial organisms there to deal with them. And so then it just keeps growing until it's completely wiped out that whole area and they die, or winter comes along, fall, autumn comes along. And so how do you deal with that? Um, you've got to get the, oh, come on, Elaine. Yes, 71-year-old brain, and it doesn't always focus come on, you know,
Got it.
focus. So we want to make certain that we have those populations. So all of those eggs that got laid, well, the grasshoppers or locusts is, I guess, what we're supposed to call them now these days. They're grasshoppers when there's just a few of them, and they're locusts when, who knows? I'll just go along with whatever they want to call them. We all know what we're talking about. So throughout all of that area is all this massive amount of eggs that have been laid. All we have to do is get out there with really good compost and basically take your snow blower or take your, the little uh, things that we control and we make them fly through the air and
Drones.
drones. There we go. Um, 71 years old. So put it in your drone, and now you're inoculating that surface with these organisms that attack and consume the eggs of those problem or of the problem you had the previous year. And whenever you see a population getting out of hand in such a completely total overwhelming way, you want to make certain that you go out and check your soil food web. Which one of these 30 different organisms is in extremely low number? And if they're not present, this whole scenario of getting out of control and the controls can't really pick up any speed. So you have one of those, once every 7th year or once every 18th year, whatever, it builds to that place, wipes everything out. Well, if very many of those grasshoppers hatched this next spring, there's nothing to eat anyway, so they're not going to survive. So it's, think through that whole scenario, and you understand why we have those intermittent boom or bust kind of situation.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Where I was living in Saskatchewan, we had massive amounts of grasshoppers. Thankfully, I had some organic farmers who are to the north and the south, no, pardon, north and the west and the east. And so, but I have a conventional farmer to the south. And it was interesting because last year, most of our garden got just completely decimated. And I've not been applying everything that I have learned from you in my garden. I've been working on heart and soil more and sharing resources and tools with people. But even in the small amount that I did do last year, and I'm telling you, small amount to build the soil food web, it was very curious to see that there were the same amount of grasshoppers hopping around. Like you can't walk on the road even without and they only hit like a tiny corner, like maybe I don't know 5 or 6 bean plants at the corner of the garden, and they didn't go into hardly anything else. So it was really fascinating to actually witness that
Yep.
Phenomenon that in theory that garden should have just been decimated,
Yep.
right?
Yep. But
But it wasn't.
because you had enough of that biology on the surfaces, all of those flavors, those materials, the sugars, the proteins, the carbs, things like that, weren't
Mhm.
right for those grasshoppers. And I'm sure a few of them went in there and took some bites and went, take me someplace else. This is horrible.
Mhm.
So it's like making me go to some fast food joint
Right.
and have dinner. Is like, I'll just have a cup of ice cream, thank you.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see it in action. So I know you dive deep into helping people learn how to make really good compost in the soil food web training. And I'm wondering what are the maybe most 2 or 3 common mistakes that people make when they're making compost?
Um, yeah, a common mistake. Um, not really having a pulse or having an understanding of the fungal to bacterial biomass ratio or the carbon to nitrogen ratios. Um, we we always want to be looking at our compost to see what is present in there. Look at what the biology is in your agricultural fields. And then is that at the level that your plants require? And so it's really easy to chart your course of what you have to do if you just do a couple of, you got to look at what's in your compost and you got to look at what's in the soil itself. So you increase those organism numbers that are missing. So then you're dealing with most of the pests and you're dealing with most of the weeds under those conditions. Um, Fungal to bacterial ratios really deal more with what's going on with nitrogen and NH3 and, excuse me, NH4 and NO3, because there's a shift there as you go from NO3 system, soil is dominated by nitrate, you're going to be selecting for the weedy species. And huge generality, but it tends to hold true that if you're dealing with, oh, any one of those cute little yellow flowers that turn into a billion little seeds that go flying every which way. Yeah. Um, so most of the time you can hold any of those guys back. What we want to see instead is an increase of the NH4 ammonium, because that selects for fungi being grown in that soil. And that ratio of fungi to bacteria is determining the dividing line between something that is weeds or something that is the plant you want to grow. Hopefully some understory plant in there too to protect your soil that's not going to be shaded by your crop plant. So we want to make certain that that drop of water falling from the sky, when it hits your soil surface, you don't want to have all that stored energy from falling that far and pressure pulling it down and smacking into your soil. You cause compaction at about 3 inches down.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start having a compaction layer here, you don't get the proper drainage. You get puddling, it goes anaerobic, it harms your plants, the root systems can't grow as deep as they need to grow to get to the nutrients that they want. They can't hold the water the way that your plants need the water. And typically most of that water will move off in that springtime period, taking all the soluble nutrients with it. So if you happen to have soluble nutrients, gosh, that's just exactly that time that the chemical guys told you that you should be putting on your 400 pounds of nitrogen, because your plants are lacking that need, and they need to put that back into the system. Well, not if you're going to irrigate, not if you're going to allow rainfall to happen. You're going to lose all those soluble nutrients. So I spent all my money buying something that is now just going to go downhill. Sorry.
That's okay. Hmm.
Aren't you glad that you're at the other end of the virtual system?
Hmm. So what I heard you say is to have a really good understanding and to practice, well, probably practice making compost, right? Become familiar with it. And then secondly is have a good understanding of what happens with the ratios when you're using different ratios of the greens and the nitrogen and the wood. And then the other piece, which is really, it sounds like it's more important than we might give credit to, is to understand the soil that we're working with and the plants that we want to grow, to know the kind of compost that we want to make.
Yep.
And that's really what you dive into at the Soil Food Web. And that's why the training is so valuable for farmers and gardeners and people who want to work with soil.
Yep. And it's why it works to get a consultant for a lot of people, is just let them come in, and year after year after year of explaining all of this stuff, the farmer finally starts catching on. We'd really like to see everyone become independent. Just don't say that when I'm talking to a bunch of the students that are going to go through the whole thing and become consultants. We're working really hard to make sure that your job is gone. Well, I think we're going to be fine. It'll take 3, 4, 500 years for everybody to be finally, converted. So I
Yeah.
think we're okay.
So you're speaking at This is Organic BC's conference coming up in November. What excites you the most about speaking to farmers and gardeners?
Especially with those guys, it's a bit of, I've been down here. This is, I think, will make the third time that I've done the keynote, or up there in the front, and stories of who's been successful. That's what I'd like to get. And so if I can be there with all of, talking to people, I can get a couple of them to please send the story, send the information, or if that's like, I don't write so well. Well, can we hook you up with somebody local who, gosh, just like this person called Natalie,
Right.
Heart and Soil magazine, could we hook you up with those people?
Mhm.
Um, so that we get written information on what they've done. Because
Mhm.
it is people being successful that finally draws them to this last step. They believe it, that, they've heard about this, they believe it, okay, but now exactly how do I do it on my property? Um, okay, there are always little tricks and little things that you do that nobody else does, and you've got to check and make sure that they can uh, that they're going to be successful, or they won't commit more than an acre of their land.
Right. And one piece that's vulnerable for people is finding the consultant, right? Finding somebody who can work, because not everyone can put the time aside to study with the soil food web. So does does a consultant have to go to the farm, or can a person work with a consultant from a distance?
You can work at a distance. The only thing we're gonna want to, where you've got to connect to the closest um, consultant, probably is makes most sense.
Mhm.
um, is connect with that person, and that's why we have all of the consultants, and we're training. Gosh, it's like 2,000 people a year being trained, and I know of only like 3 or 4 people who just don't seem to manage, you know, turning it into a ongoing relationship with the farmers. And I guess you always have to kind of go, well, yeah, they're trying to be something that they are not. Um, you can't yell and scream at folks and demand that they do what you're telling them to do.
Mhm.
You're there to consult. You're not there to put them in prison unless they do what you want them to do. So enough people there in that part of the country that they should be able to get hold of a consultant and start working with them. So like if you, I don't know how much land you have, but excuse me, sniffles. Um, so if you wanted to start working with one, I'm sure there's one close to you, reasonably close. I wouldn't, I'd have to go to the map on the website and find out whether there was a good person to have you work with. But that certainly works for people who have already too much to do.
And the
And
consultants are great because they have gone through the certification. They have practiced making compost and reading the compost and understanding the biology in great depth. And so they they can work with any type of environment. It's not just somebody who's doing it like vegetable farming or grain farming or vineyards or an apple orchard. When a person understands the soil food web and has gone through the soil food web training, they can work with any type of soil. Is that true?
yeah, um, because we try to cover a wide number of different kinds of climates and habitats,
Hmm.
what to keep track of. And so when they run into something where they don't really have, or they're insecure about, where are they going to be telling their client the right thing?
Hmm.
They've got other consultants back at the school, and that
Hmm.
will give them a call in the next couple days,
Hmm.
So a lot of
Right.
internal yakety yak between people. How did you do this? How did you do that? I found this piece of equipment that looks like this, snap a picture. And I'd like to know if it would be a good thing to buy. And, so you get um, 5 people responding with, don't touch that, not with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I got, all 5 of them agreed it was not worth or somebody comes in with something else and everybody says, yeah, that's great, that if you need it, buy it, it's well worth it what you're doing. And then there's the ones who are kind of like, well, if you're doing this kind of agriculture, that piece of equipment might work, but maybe if you could do this, or
Mhm.
you can just go get a bucket, put a sieve in it, put your compost on top of the sieve, swish the water around, and that looks like compost tea to me, or compost extract to me.
Right.
How how technologically crazy do you have to be? Only if you own that farm that's over 100 acres. I think that's the cutoff point. You can have fun with it up to about 100 acres. Beyond that, it's so much of a commitment that you can't mess up because you're going to lose that investment.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes sense. Is there anything else that you want to touch on today before we wrap up, Elaine?
Oh, we could go on and on for
No, we
hours.
could. We could.
So just yeah, know, things are going well. We're still increasing the number of people that we're training all the time. Um,
Exciting. A lot
so
of people joined in. I didn't really share the affiliate link from when I did the soil food web, but there's a lot of people on our newsletter list who have replied back that they are taking the training and they're just really loving it. So it was really cool to see.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Um, I have one more question. Oh, what does regeneration mean to you?
it's kind of once upon a time that area of soil or that ecosystem, whatever level of structure that you want to talk about, it once had all of the microorganisms. Everything was functioning the way it was supposed to. Um, and then along comes, well, Mother Nature can be pretty hard on, you know, keeping things the same for years and years and years. So maybe she just, it was time for Hurricane Lisa or something. And, then you have to figure out how to climb back from that. But when it's man-made, when it's us making the mess, that's we need to regenerate it. We definitely, well, even when nature comes along and wipes out something, we want to regenerate it as rapidly as possible. We want it back in the same shape it was in because of the really good balances of bacteria and fungi, protozoa, nematodes, microarthropods, earthworms, encatriids, all of those things. We want those balances to come back into the right place as rapidly as possible. And
Hmm.
so regeneration is bringing you back to where you could grow the plants you want. Well, is that regeneration for um, broccoli going to be the same as regenerating for a good crop of winter wheat? How about a shrubbery? How about trees? Now, the actual ratios are different. And so that's where you got to be using your microscope to figure out, is this at the right place yet or not? How much more compost do I have to put on, or extract do I have to put on to get the ratio to where it needs to be? So that's regeneration. We're putting things back the way they were.
I love that. And I heard you are using compost tea on the banyan tree, the
Yep,
in
yep,
Maui.
yep.
So how big is that tree?
It's a whole city block.
Whole city block. And so tell me what's happening with the what are you doing with it to help?
We're spraying the plant, and everywhere where it touches ground. We're trying to get that regenerated back into soil and having quite a good turnaround. And up come the little stems, and it's all coming back to life where the biology has been applied.
That's amazing.
Yep. So the guys at Synergy in California, it's up in um, San, Oh, one of those sand places. Ramon? Well, I could be wrong. If you look up the company's Synergy, you'll find Mike, and I'm going to
Mhm.
also forget his last name. So
Come on.
when I yeah,
Okay.
I'll try to track it down and send it to you.
Okay, that would be awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the work you do, Elaine, and I appreciate your heart and your curiosity. And I'm not
Uh,
too sure what to call it, but there's just something really special about you and the way you show up for all of us wanting to learn more about the soil and learn more about how we can work with nature and be her partner.
yep, make it easier and easier, faster and faster, where
Yes,
we all can regenerate at a snap of our fingers.
amen to that. Right.
Okay, thank you so
Okay.
much
Yeah,
for,
thank you. And I will see you. I'll probably see you in Penticton.
okay,
All
alrighty.
right. Big love.
Take care. Ciao.
Go. We have a link to Dr. Elaine's Soil Food Web School in the video description below. So be sure to click on that link if you want to go check it out. And you can find them on Instagram at Soil Food Web School. You make yourself an amazing day. Have fun making your compost. Practice it a lot. Keep your hands in your soil and your bare feet on the ground. To learn more about regenerative farming, gardening, and living with Heart and Soil, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell so you know when our new interviews drop, and be sure to share it with a friend if you think they might like it. Big love.